Okay. Wow. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Faith and Global Engagement and McDonald Distinguished Lecture Series. My name is Steve Galtney, and I'm the Managing Director of Faith and Global Engagement. And tonight, with the Distinguished Lecture Series, it's a special event because we have a partner group working with us tonight, and that is, as you can see on the screen, Cedars. So Cedars and Faith and Global Engagement have been working in partnership, especially on character leadership, so the topic of tonight that we're working on. And this is in the Lead for Life program. So Cedars and Faith and Global Engagement have been working on bringing together the Lead for Life program, which is the character leadership program at University of Hong Kong. So maybe just show of hands, how many people here are in some way connected to Lead for Life? Just kind of raise your hand. Okay, good. Okay, so how many people are not connected to Lead for Life but part of the university community, like in staff or, students? Excellent. Okay, great. And how many people are just part of the broader Hong Kong community? All right, great. Okay, that's exactly what we are looking for, is this coming together, this bridging together of the staff and the students, and then also the community. Now, the partnership with Cedars and Faith and Global Engagement and Oxford is not a new partnership. It's been going around, it's going to be going on for several years. When I was preparing for tonight, then I came across this picture. So this picture, you'll have to really squint in the back if you're going to see this. But this picture basically is from 2019. So that was even before the world changed, right? In 2019, here you had the Oxford Global Leadership Initiative. And if you look really closely, right there in the middle, you can see Professor Samson See. And then if you look right over here at the end, you see our guest speaker tonight, Dr. Edward Brooks. And then right here in the middle, you see the founder of Faith and Global Engagement, Daniel Chua. So this picture was in 2019, but actually this wasn't even the first character leadership. There was a character leadership program in 2017. So this partnership has been going on for some time. So we're glad that you can be a part of it tonight. Here's how the evening is going to work. What we're going to do is, you didn't come here to hear me, so I'm going to get off stage pretty quickly. And then we're going to have Dr. Ed Brooks come and talk to us about character leadership, why it matters, how do we cultivate it, how do we develop it in every sphere of our life, whatever our calling is at the moment. And then after that, we're going to have a response. And the response will come from Professor Samson See, our Dean of Student Affairs. He'll come up and give a short response, putting it into the Hong Kong context. Then after that, it's your turn. So after that, we want to get the dialogue really started. So that will be a time for any of you, raise questions. We'll have roaming mics. And so all during the time where the lectures are going on, be jotting those down. Because that's really, for us, is when the shared learning happens, is when we're having that exchange. Sound good? Yeah? That sound like a workable program for the night? Okay. After then the Q&A, then we'll have just kind of a short wrap-up. But let me do this. Let me introduce kind of our double blessing we have tonight. We have two different individuals coming to share kind of their perspectives on character leadership. The first one we mentioned is Dr. Edward Brooks, and I'll introduce him in just a minute. But before I do so, I want to introduce this gentleman right here in the middle, Professor Samson See, who, as I mentioned before, he's our Dean of Student Affairs here at the University of Hong Kong. When this picture was taken, actually, he was the Associate Dean of Social Sciences. And he is a professor in the mental health field. And his focus basically is on supporting individuals and communities in improving and their mental health challenge, or going against their mental health challenges and improving their context, both as individuals and then also collectively. If you know Samson, you know he has a heart for our students, and every day he's pouring himself out here in the university community. So right after Ed finishes, then Samson will come up. So I won't give a special introduction for him again, but let's just thank him for being here tonight. So Professor Samson See, thank you for honoring us. And thank you for all you do on a daily basis. So now our keynote speaker tonight, our guest speaker from Oxford, Dr. Ed Brooks. He flew in just last night to be with us here. And Dr. Ed Brooks is the executive director of the Oxford Character Project. And we've been working with the Oxford Character Project, as you saw, for many years. When Lead for Life was founded, when we started getting that program, Dr. Ed Brooks was one of the people we went to, and we still go to in terms of that partnership. He is also the director of the Global Leadership Program at the University of Oxford. Not sure if you're aware of that program, but it's a highly sought-after program for graduate students, and it is, Ed was telling me, there's like 3,000 applicants every year globally, of which only 500 can come in. So he's the director of that program. He's also a co-founder, and I want to get this right, he's co-founder of the Oxford SDG, so Sustainable Development Goals Impact Lab, also the co-founder of the Global Leadership Challenge, and the Oxford Global Leadership Initiative. So Ed is a busy man, and it's an honor to have him here. So let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Ed Brooks. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Steve, very much for that very generous introduction, and thank you all. It's super to see you and wonderful to be back here at the University of Hong Kong. Many thanks indeed for the privilege as well of standing here to be able to deliver this lecture this evening. Thank you to Cedars, to Faith and Global, and to the MacDonald Agape Foundation as well. I'm going to change over my slides briefly. And there they are. As we're going to think together about leading with character, I want us to start with a global leadership gathering that took place just 2 weeks ago. So 2 weeks ago, the leaders of the world were in New York. They gather in New York every year, and they were there for the United Nations General Assembly. And on the agenda of the General Assembly this year was the Sustainable Development Goals. The to-do list, if you like, for the world. This to-do list comprises 17 goals. They stretch from the eradication of poverty, hunger, dealing with climate change, gender equality, building strong institutions, a fair and just society. They're a comprehensive list, and they were set out in 2015 with a whole lot of goals and targets to be achieved by 2030. So right now is the midpoint, and the leaders of the world gathered together to discuss where we're up to. And the answer is that we're not doing very well. And so as Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, stood up at the Assembly, he said that the SDGs need a global rescue plan. They need a global rescue plan. Well, what goes into that plan? How do you rescue the SDGs? How do you get things done? There you are. You're a group of global leaders. Well, you might think, well, we need a strategy. Of course, you need a strategy. And that strategy's got to exist at lots of different levels, doesn't it? It needs to be a strategy at the top level of society amongst those global leaders. But it needs to be strategies within each country, strategies at the local and community level, because that's where many of these problems, of course, exist. You might think, and they discussed, we need money, we need finance to come behind and support this vision. We also need technology, and there's amazing technology which can help us to achieve these goals. Many of them can be achieved. The resources are there. But of course, they discussed perhaps the biggest challenge, and that is the leadership challenge that is needed to achieve these goals. Because there are so many and so many diverse and divided interests around the world, to focus the attention of the world on the fact that 1.2 billion people are still living in multidimensional poverty as of 2022, it seems like a massive task. What's needed is a kind of courageous moral leadership, right at the top of society and scaling right through it. Courage to take on difficult challenges, compassion to care and care deeply and sacrificially. It's going to take creativity and collaboration and a whole lot more. It comes down to character. And that's what we're talking about tonight, this insight that actually, with so many things we want to see change in the world, so much discussion of leadership, what's really needed at the heart of the issue The intuition is that what's needed is leaders with a certain kind of character, committed, courageous, moral leadership to get these really important things done. The intuition, I think, supported as you look about and think about the kinds of leaders you might look up to. Here are some of mine. This is Harriet Tubman. She, if you don't know of her, is a 19th century American abolitionist and activist. She was born into slavery in Maryland in the American South. She escaped from slavery, having been so brutally beaten as a child that the injuries continued to cause her pain throughout her life. And yet, having escaped from the South to the North, to a free life and away from slavery, she went back and not just once, but 13 times to lead others along what was known as the Underground Railroad, the network of abolitionists and activists supporting and helping each other. What did that take? Well, yeah, there had to be some strategy, some network, of course. She didn't have much money, it wasn't that. It took incredible courage. It took incredible determination. You can read the words on the screen. It took perseverance and persistence time and time again to keep going, to keep going, to keep giving. And she did throughout her life. What about in a different sector? What about in an historic institution and in finance, contemporary finance? Mark Carney was the governor of the Bank of England at a really difficult time in finance. Just after the financial crash, he took over in the UK, trying to fix some of the problems, and he did so leading with values at the very heart, placing and emphasizing the importance of human values over and above financial value. And as he talked about it, and he was very clear, good leadership, he says, isn't just about being effective. It's about being ethical. We need a renewal, he said, of moral leadership that supports human flourishing. And he was a role model, and he walked the talk. In a different sector, think about tech. Satya Nadella, maybe you know of him, is the CEO of Microsoft. And as he came into Microsoft, he didn't come in guns blazing with a new strategy. He came in with a clear focus. That focus was on purpose, asking everyone in the company to come together and define what they were to be about and for others. And he clarified and defined Microsoft's purpose on empowerment, all about developing the tools that could empower every person, every organization. And he led and leads in a way which emphasizes empathy and service. Massive tech company, great leader, character. What does it take to be a greatest of all time? You know, those very few elite athletes in their sport who aren't just at the top, but are at the top and the top and the top and the top and stay at the top. Eliud Kipchoge is one of those. He is the current marathon world record holder in a remarkable time of 2 hours, 1 minute and 9 seconds. He's been at the top of his game for year on year on year. What keeps him there? Well, yes, he's an amazing physical specimen. His lungs must be enormous, and the ability of his heart to pump that oxygen, the blood around, and transfer the oxygen to the muscles. But if you hear Eliud Kipchoge, if you know anything of him, you'll see what he says there resonates with how he is. He's a man driven by a passion for what he does, who runs with heart and mind, whose character drives him, his self-discipline, his commitment, his honesty. That's what it takes. Team sport's the same. Sam Walker, just a couple of years ago, did some research looking at thousands of teams across sports and around the world, and he pulled together 16 teams. He narrowed it down, according to some set criteria, to 16 of the most dominant sports teams in history, stretching from the NBA to netball. He looked at right across sport. Amongst these 16, some famous teams: the Hungarian football team from the 50s, the Brazilian team from the 1960s, the New Zealand All Blacks rugby team from the late 1980s, and again, they got 2 in the list, another team in the 2010s. What did he find as he analysed what was the key thing that made these teams stand apart? The most crucial ingredient was the character of the player who leads the team. So here we have this intuition about leadership, that character is really important. As we look to the world stage, we can think, actually, yes, that's true. That's what's needed. As we think about examples of leadership we look up to, and you'll have your own, perhaps personal as well as public examples, again, the intuition is there. If we go to those places around the world that train leaders, we find a similar emphasis. This is the Harvard Business School, perhaps the foremost institution globally for leadership education in the business world. That top line is their mission statement. They say, our mission is to educate leaders who make a difference in the world. Wonderfully, they go on and define what leadership means. And they say when we talk about leaders, we mean people who embody a certain type of competence and character. These two things. Yes, you have to be really good at what you do, highly skilled, able to work well with others as well professionally. But it's nothing without character at its heart. And yet, isn't this more of what we see when we actually look at much leadership also, or much leadership education? We see a real emphasis on competence and perhaps less emphasis sometimes on character. Competence is identifiable, it's measurable. We know where we're at when it comes to developing a competence. And yet character? Kind of personal, isn't it? And internal and hard to see. And it's really important, but it's so important perhaps we can just kind of leave it there and grow on it rather than grow character itself. It can be neglected. And when it's neglected, there are bad consequences. This is what we're seeing right in the UK just at the moment. This is this week. Personal conduct is a growing risk for business. Character has come right to the fore, because across various different business sectors, there have been some senior leaders whose organisations stand for integrity and whose leaders haven't been walking the talk. Abercrombie and Fitch, one of the UK's wealthiest philanthropists, even in the British Army. The crises often involve different dimensions of power, money, sex, but character is neglected and is a disaster as a result. Character and competence. We've been looking in our research at the University of Oxford at culture, character and leadership in a few different business sectors over the last few years in a major research project. We've been looking at financial services, at technology, at law, at business more generally, working with 51 companies right around the UK. Just last week, we put out a report based on some research on good leadership in UK business, where we didn't go in with our theory of what leadership is, but we went in and asked employees across different levels in organisations, how do you understand what good leadership is all about? We analysed, surveyed over 1,100 people in 36 firms across these three sectors. The research method involves some different levels to it. The first time we go to the companies with a blank sheet and an open box. And we ask participants to freely list the features of good leadership that are most important to them. We tidy up that data and take it to a second group of participants. And that second group then ranks those terms according to their centrality. And then in the specific sectors, we analyse that centrality data doing some cognitive testing, speed of processing, awareness and recall, to understand whether or not there's actually a kind of coherent prototype around these central terms. I'm just going to share these data from the middle study here with you, which is what we found when we asked people what good leadership looks like in UK business. There were 84 features in all, and they were categorised according to 3 dimensions by researchers: character, competence, and interpersonal skills. Or you might think about competence in terms of the professional elements and competence in terms of the personal elements. What did we find? Well, we found that people in UK businesses across different levels, right across these different sectors, when asked what good leadership consists of, said, character. Yes, it's about professional competence. That's there and it's really important. Yes, interpersonal skills are important too, but 52% of the features that were identified by employees in UK business are about personal, moral, intellectual qualities of human beings. Comes back to character. And these were the character qualities to illustrate so you can see them together from the previous data. People think good leadership is about having integrity, being hardworking, being responsible, committed, resilient, trustworthy, confident, honest, focused, driven, decisive, ethical, respectful. We could go on. Yes, you need to be professional and competent and strategic, and you need to be able to communicate well, to listen well, to relate well to others. But you can see from the list, and if you look at the top of the list, character is even more prominent. We've got off to a bit of a start. We're going to reboot now and walk through some steps in the rest of the lecture, and 3 parts to it. So we started to talk about character without really defining what we're talking about. So that's what we're going to kind of step back and do just for a moment. What is character? This term is so familiar, it's historic. What does it actually mean? What are we talking about? Let's get specific. Then we're going to think about some objections to leading with character, and 2 in particular. The idea that, yes, character might be important, but the situations, the circumstances, the culture, actually, that is what matters more. And culture eats character for breakfast. We're going to think about a realism objection as well, saying, yes, this talk of character, that's really nice, but isn't it actually about being effective at the end of the day? It's nice, but don't nice guys finish last? So we'll take those objections, and then we'll move on. And if you're still moving on, we've got some time for questions and discussion at the end. So I hope we'll have some good and lively conversation as well. In the 3rd part, we'll think about how you grow in character, how you can up your inner game, taking responsibility not just for the competence growth, but for personal development, for character development as well. And because there are only time for 3 points, you've got to have 3. We could think about keeping score, but maybe only as a kind of end note at the end. Maybe we could pick that up, the idea of measuring character in the discussion. First then, what is character? What are we actually talking about? So in our work at the Oxford Character Project, we draw on work at the intersection of virtue ethics, so philosophical work where character is understood philosophically in a tradition of virtue ethics which stretches in the West back to Aristotle, in the East to Confucius. But contemporary work which joined philosophy to work in moral psychology and education, where character has come to the fore as something that can be developed today in classrooms and in universities. What are we talking about here? When we talk about character, we're talking about the dispositions or habits that consistently shape how a person thinks, feels, or acts. So we're thinking with a real focus on the personal dimension of leadership. Character is the dispositions or habits, the constellation of them, the collection of them, that shapes how you think, how you feel, how you act. Character traits are consistent across situations, so we can give the label of honest or resilient to a person. We could say Daniel is resilient, or Steve is honest, and we can ascribe character qualities to people because we have an expectation they don't just behave like that in some circumstances, but generally across a range of different circumstances. That's the way in which they show up. They're stable across situations and spheres of life. But character qualities are not fixed. They're developed, and developed over time. They're habits, and developed by repeated practice, by habituation. Of course, character isn't necessarily positive. Character can be positive, and traits could be virtues. Those are positive character qualities. Justice, joy, hope, forgiveness, love, generosity. We can keep talking. But of course, there are negative character qualities as well, and these come into leadership. We see it: selfishness, greed, the kinds of ambition which push others out of the way. Character can be cultivated then, but it can also be corrupted. And it's shaped by all that goes on around us, by the patterns of our life, by the stories and narratives that we tell that are important to us, by the spaces we inhabit, by the experiences we endure. character is developed in different contexts and over time. But it also involves an active choice. It's self-directed. We can determine to act in line with our values and to grow and become a person who is more temperate, more calm, perhaps. And isn't that important in leadership? Not jumping immediately when the next situation comes up, when things don't look good, into a crisis mode, but being able to keep calm, to be steady, to be able to see what's important, to act and exercise good judgment. Character involves choice and autonomy. There are three key components in this idea of character as we're talking about it in the philosophical literature. So a motivational component to character. It's about the aspiration to be a certain kind of person. So character doesn't just involve behaviours and actions, but it involves the motivation to act in a certain kind of way, to live in accord with what matters to us and to whom we want to become. There's an intellectual component to character. It's about identifying and understanding circumstances and situations. It's about determining the best course of action in line with our best lights. There's an intellectual component. And there's a skill component. Character is about successfully acting on values and concerns under pressure. Not just being motivated to do the right thing, not just identifying what the right thing to do is, but actually having the skill to go through and do it appropriately under pressure in time. And it's developed by practice. We could think about different kinds of virtues of character as well, and typically divided into three different groups. So moral virtues, these are the excellences that underlie pro-social purpose and ethical action. And they align personal ambition towards the collective or common goods that leaders need to advance. So these include justice, courage, moderation, generosity, humility, kindness. Of course, we need leaders who are characterized by these things, who put their own ambition second to a pursuit of justice first. That's a moral virtue. But also intellectual virtues and character traits can relate to excellences of thinking as well as being. So intellectual virtues is the idea here, and they relate to the acquisition and maintenance and sharing of knowledge. So leaders need to be people who are open to gaining new sources of information, who are curious in order to understand just what's happening, the situation as things are going on. To be open-minded, not thinking that they have just in their perspective all that there is to know. Intellectual humility comes in here as well, having a good sense of the limits of your knowledge, but also charity, honesty, intellectual rigor. These patterns of thought are really important when it comes to leading wisely. And performance virtues, the third category. These have an instrumental value and they enable the other two virtues to keep going and over time. Resilience, determination, confidence. This is where these kinds of qualities come in. So moral, intellectual, performance virtues. We're breaking down this big idea of character into these different component parts. And that's really important because in order to develop anything, you have to focus on what it is that you're trying to develop. And for each of these virtues, they exist at a point of development which is a mean. That is to say, for every character quality, or for most, and justice is often considered an exception, there's a vice on either side. So courage is in the middle of cowardice, which is a lack of courage, and rashness, which is an excess. And in order to develop courage, you need to identify where you are perhaps inclined to be on that spectrum from cowardice to rashness, and control in the other way, coming closer to executing at the mean. These are some leadership virtues we perhaps talk about after in the Q&A as to whether there is a kind of one set or many sets of virtues that are important for leadership, or sets which are important in different circumstances or contexts or situations or cultures. But here are some which I think perhaps important for leadership. So justice is important to advance the common good. You do need courage to manage risk rightly. Not to take risk all the time for everything, but to take the right risks and at the right time. Those intellectual virtues, to be able to take a view, you need to have a certain intellectual firmness. Not to be always umming and ahhing, spinelessness, or really rigid, never changing your mind, but to be able to be firm but persuaded by evidence. Isn't that an important quality if you're to lead others wisely and well? So you can see for each virtue, there's a spectrum and a work to be done to order your life and your actions in the middle of it. And that applies across these different dimensions, in the moral dimension, the intellectual dimension, the performance dimension, all important for good leadership. A useful analogy, and this comes from Aristotle, is one of the archer hitting the mark. And there are different ways that you can hit and different ways to miss. If you like, 4 things that you need to line up in order to hit the target of virtue. Maybe we'll think about integrity here, and a leader in a finance firm who's really focused on integrity and wants to improve and build a culture of integrity in the organization. So, our leader, she decides on the object, the culture initiative, building a firm of integrity. And she has her culture initiative set up. That's a hit. So on the top left, she's there in the middle. But the occasion, our leader's chosen to launch her initiative right in the middle of a major deadline for a large number of employees in the firm. Not quite the right occasion. And you can miss. The means is important as well. You see, you can't dictate a culture initiative. You need to build consensus, perhaps using focus groups. If our leader does that, she's in the middle, she's hitting. The motive also matters. Keeping the regulator happy is not a good motive to launch a culture initiative to promote integrity in a firm. And if you do that, and many firms do, under pressure from regulators, then how long is the integrity initiative going to last? Well, we're seeing this in the UK at the moment, where many integrity initiatives in financial services were launched after the financial crisis. And many are coming to an end because the pressure is no longer on. What judgment does is holds virtue together and enables leaders to do the right thing, that's the object. At the right time, that's the occasion. In the right way, that's the means. And for the right reason, that's the motive. And to be able to hold all of these different dimensions together, that's what enables leaders to hit the mark. See, character is actually quite complicated. It's quite complicated. But we'll see when it comes to developing it. It's beautifully simple as well. I want to say that as we're talking about character today, the vision we're talking about is both old and new. So going back to the classical world, the world of Plato and Aristotle in the West and Confucius in the East, there was a vision of leadership which was all about leaders pursuing justice and the common good. And the good of the society depended on the moral self-cultivation of those in leadership positions. The character of the society depended on the character of the leader. And so as you look to choose leaders in society, character is what needs to be looked for. Well, that vision waxed and waned over time. It was reborn at a prominent period in Europe in the Italian Renaissance. Petrarch is the Italian poet in the 14th century who prominently advocated for a return to virtue in the face of a multidimensional crisis that was facing Italy at the time. There was war in Europe between France and England, which was causing economic challenges. There was poverty because of a small ice age event and climate change leading to crops not being produced. There was a pandemic with the Black Death. Does it sound familiar? And in Italian society at the time, there was a move that what was needed in those kinds of challenging and difficult times was a renewal of character leadership. Restoration of the political and social order depends on a prior ordering in the souls of leaders. James Hankins is a professor of the Italian Renaissance. This brilliant book describes this period of history and how soulcraft, that's the character development, comes prior to statecraft, that's the public leadership. This is a classical vision, reborn at various periods in history and perhaps coming back to the fore again today. Certainly, as the research that we've been doing has shown, there's greater and greater prominence to character in leadership across a number of sectors. We've been looking at business, as I say, most recently, with various reports that have been coming out, but also at higher education and at global leadership, exploring character-based leadership in low and middle income countries, 137 of them around the world. Let me share a little bit about this final research project. And it's really interesting, because what you see is you look at the research, and we did a review of the research papers, over 1,000 of them we found over the last 20 or so years, is a consistent increase in character-based leadership papers across low and middle income countries, and especially an uptick during and after COVID. Perhaps it's the same dynamic as Renaissance Italy. When things are hard, we look for leadership. When we look for leadership in hard times, we look for a certain kind. Servant leadership comes prominently to the fore in this research. Many of the papers focus on the corporate sector, as well as the education, healthcare sectors as well. Not much on the public sector, which perhaps is a missed opportunity or something that needs to be explored further. But you can see here what character qualities are emphasized. What are people talking about as leadership virtues? Empathy, honesty, courage, transparency, care, fairness, agility, innovation, integrity. This is the kind of leadership that people around the world are talking about and doing research on. So that's character. The intellectual and moral qualities, habits or dispositions that are at the centre of the human personality, that shape the way we think, feel and act, that are virtues, positive qualities, vices, negative ones, that lie at a mean between an excess and a deficiency, and that can be developed over time, that are central to good leadership. But, and here's the but, some objections. Doesn't culture eat character for breakfast? Do you know what this is on the right-hand side in that picture? Looks like you could eat it for breakfast. But it's not the shape that you usually see. In Japan, watermelons can be grown in boxes such that they're square. And perhaps this is something of an analogy to the way in which contexts and cultures can shape us and our character as well. Certainly many experiments were conducted after the Second World War when this question came to the fore. You can imagine why. The Milgram experiments at Yale were most famous. In these experiments by Stanley Milgram, a participant was invited in to be the teacher in an experiment. There was a learner that the teacher couldn't see, the other side of a divide. And there was an instructor next to the participant teacher. Okay. And what happened in the experiment was that every time the learner got a question wrong, the teacher was instructed to give that learner an electric shock, or what they thought was an electric shock. The learner was an actor. So the teacher is there with the button, and the learner gets a question wrong and is instructed, press the button. Presses it 75 volts, and there's a scream. This goes on, and again, a question's wrong, 150 volts, press that button. Presses the button, and there's a louder scream. 330 volts. The scream is enormous, and then there's complete silence. 450 volts. At this time, they could hear nothing from the learner on the other side of the divide. 26 out of 40 participants pressed the button. 26 out of 40 pressed the button. Would you do that? No. But in the circumstances, the Stanford prison experiment is a famous one that followed as students were divided into two groups to act out the roles of guards or prisoners, and the experiment turned to chaos. Some others which are perhaps a bit lighter, ambient noise, has been shown to decrease helping behaviours. A bakery store context. You walk past a bakery store, makes you a bit happier, more likely to give change to a stranger. But the point across all of these is the same. Isn't it the culture, the context, which is doing the work? The point's the same, perhaps, if you look at many stories in the professional world. This is a recent one from Jamie Fury-Higgins, who was a partner at Goldman Sachs, and he talks in her book, Bully Market, about her experience. She says, "For years, I felt I had to act in ways contrary to my values in order to succeed. My bank account ballooned, but my morals were shrinking. My values weren't determining my conduct. The culture of Goldman Sachs that I experienced was. I didn't recognize myself anymore." Sister Jamie had traded the morals her family had instilled in her for the power, the money, and the prestige of Goldman Sachs. No longer just a victim, I was complicit, perpetuating the toxic environment in which I found myself. What do we make of that? Isn't this a defeater, this objection, for all of this great talk about personal character? Well, no, and not quite. You see, Jamie Fury-Higgins left Goldman and wrote the book. You see, there were many who didn't succumb to the pressure of the Milgram experiment, and even those that did so against many of the better angels of their nature. And furthermore, it's not just that culture shapes character, but that culture can be shaped by leaders of character in turn. This is Alison Cottrell, CEO of the Financial Services Culture Board, who spent her last 10 years working on culture change in finance. Characters may shape culture, particularly if we sit at the top of the hierarchy. Leaders have an influence and a responsibility as role models and as shapers of culture that in turn shapes others. What about the second objection? Realism. Nice guys finish last. This one stretches all the way back to Machiavelli, most famously, whose argument is that, yes, of course, it's more praiseworthy for a leader to be a good person, to be of good faith, to have integrity, rather than to be crafty and deceitful. But, he says, in practice, in order to do good things, you need to have small account for good faith. Actually, you need to be able to get the better of those with other means. You need to be able to change, he says, to the opposite. Adam Grant is a professor at Wharton Business School. He did some research on this dynamic in a book called Give and Take. He published it. In his research, he analysed people into three groups. Takers are people who always put their own needs first. They're interested in getting as much as they can. They might be the people who would happily borrow the assignment you've done, write it out, and hand it in as their own. They'll happily be a free rider on the project in the office. We don't like them. And perhaps we know some. Givers are people who love to give. They are always giving. They'd give away their research and let someone else take the credit for it. They'd always be the ones in the office making tea again and again. And again, they're always seeking to give. Maybe we know some of those too. Matchers are in the middle. They want interaction that's balanced. They do care about fairness. They give, yes, but they expect to receive. And they operate at this point. And what Adam Grant did was did some research with salespeople, medical students, engineers, and he identified these tendencies within them using interviews and surveys, placed them in each group, and then plotted the performance of those groups against measures of success, revenues for the salespeople, grades for the students, output for the engineers, who did best and who did worst. Well, the results are complicated. Who were the worst performers? Givers. They gave themselves away. They were always doing everything for everyone else. They came bottom across the different categories. But who came top? Who were the best? Who were the most successful? Also givers. They built relational connections, strong bonds, trust. They were able to get things done and work with others. And Adam Grant analyzes in his research and says there are two things that are important. One is the time scale. Givers perform best, but over the long run. Over the long run. Not necessarily the short haul, but over the long run. And secondly, it's really important to be wise. Not just to give and give and give, but to know and understand that there's a taker. I'm not going to give. To give within reason, to give out of your means, not just to give everything away. Timeline and wisdom. I'm going to keep skipping on some research more of ours that we've done, looking at the global leadership research, thinking about the different dimensions here of performance that were shown, and some research from the Harvard Human Flourishing Project, which looks at aspects of human flourishing, identifies two particular items, one thinking about physical health, the other about character, which correlate to the compound measure of human flourishing. Character underlies performance, it underlies flourishing, it's important across domains, you can develop it. And here I'm going to end and briefly give 3 ways that character can be developed. The 3 actually come from 7 strategies that we work with at the Oxford Character Project, and that I'm working with Michael Lamb, who's a professor at Wake Forest University in the United States, and we're writing a book elaborating more of these strategies, which are there in published articles you can find online. The 7 are habituation through practice. I'll come back to that. But reflection on experience, not just experiencing, but having habits and patterns of reflection to learn in an ongoing way. Engaging with exemplars, learning the language of virtue and character. Being aware of these pressures that are around us. Those are the situational variables. Having reminders that remind us of the best ambition that we have of ourselves, of our commitment to others. And developing deep friendships. The 3 I want to focus on, habituation through practice. Here the idea is that we become what we repeatedly do. So as Aristotle says, we become builders by building, harpists by playing the harp. We become just by doing just actions. Julia Annas is a contemporary moral philosopher who's taken this forward in a wonderful book talking about the skill analogy. The book's called Intelligent Virtue. The skill analogy for character and virtue development. Imagine how you practice anything in life that you want to get good at. Well, think about character in the same way. Identify it, focus on it, and practice it. Practice it, practice it, practice it. Find a behavior which aligns with a virtue and get going and keep going. It doesn't happen by accident. It does happen over time if you work at it. Second, engagement with virtuous exemplars. And the idea here is that we become like those we admire. We become like those we admire. This is the intuition around role modeling, that role models are important, that they have a shaping and powerful effect because we look up to them. They're there. There's an aspiration to be in the position that person's in, to do what they do. What are they doing? How are they doing it? That's what I'll do. We become like those we admire. And exemplars show us the good life. They give us a model to emulate. There's like a heart elevation that happens as we look up to those in positions that we aspire to hold ourselves, and an inspiration to be better. They can help us to make moral decisions, remind us, expand our imagination of what the good life looks like. How well do you know your heroes? How well do you know your heroes? Do you get up close with them, reading about their life, exploring what drove them, where their strengths were, how they grew up, what their ways of leading look like? It's got to take intention here. But you can do that. There's so many incredible resources available. Find someone you look up to. Maybe that's a public figure and you can read about their life. You can learn about their life. You can learn about their weaknesses as well as their strengths. Maybe it's a personal figure. You can ask them and talk to them and think about what it means for you to live after their example in your own way. Finally, friendships of mutual accountability. Our friends can help us to become our best selves. But here it's really important that we understand friendship. In the classical world, friendship was divided into 3 types: friends of pleasure, utility, and virtue. Pleasure friendships are friends that we might enjoy shared activity with, sport or culture. Those are great friends, and it's great to do things with others and to have fun. Those are friends of pleasure, and they're great. Friends of utility are the friends that you have maybe on LinkedIn. They're the business connections, the networks. You know, they're friends. We might go out for a drink with them or a coffee, but there's a kind of utility element here. You know, they're helping us out, we're helping them out, and this is good, we like them, but that's not all there is. The deepest kinds of friendship, and the kind of friendship relevant to character development, is a friendship of virtue. A friendship of virtue. And friends of virtue are the kinds of friends that will tell you and help you to be the best version of yourself. They will ask you questions about the deepest things that are most important to you. They will ask you or Inquire when you don't seem to be living up to your ideals. They'll provide you with support and accountability. Clementine Churchill is an example here, and an amazing one. It was 1940, the war was not going well. The Germans had the Second World War. The Germans had overrun France, and the British had withdrawn. And Winston Churchill, you can imagine, Prime Minister, has taken over under a lot of pressure. And his behaviour, others around him, is becoming increasingly irritable, angry, overbearing. And some of his colleagues go to Clementine and say, this is a problem. And she thinks hard what to do. And she writes this letter, and we know this happened because we have the letter still. She writes this letter to him saying, Winston, I've written and rewritten this letter and torn it up many times, but I need to write to you and tell you that some of your colleagues have come to me and said that you're behaving completely out of character. And what's more, that you are so impossible to live with and work with that it's actually putting this war effort in danger. And Winston, you know, this isn't you, she says. You know, you prize calm and you're open and you taught a bit. This isn't you. And she calls him back to his own best lights. And just beautifully, she finishes the letter with this little drawing of a cat. It's the affection, the love, the devotion that enables her to be able to say that and be in that position. That's the kind of friendship that enables character to develop. I'm going to stop there, just a couple of minutes over time. I apologise for that. But perhaps that's something to get the conversation going, and we can think about keeping score, maybe, in the conversation that follows. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Ed. And now, Professor Samson C., if you would like to give the response from HKU.
Well, first of all, Ed, I want to say I enjoy listening to the Oxford accent again. So thank you. It's such a joy, such a privilege to listen. I have to add, it's not only the voice, the accent, but I think your lecture is very, very good. I want to let you know I chose to sit there instead of at the front seat, because I tell myself I want to be just a regular, ordinary person. I want to learn. I want to open my heart to learn from you as well. And I feel quietly my prayer is answered. So thank you. Hey, give him another round of applause, please. I think it's an amazing lecture. And so thank you. I want to share with you the backdrop I brought to the lecture or to the gathering here tonight. As the Dean of Student Affairs, I have many celebratory things to work on and so many things to enjoy and so forth. But at the same time, I do have some dark material. I brought to you, ladies and gentlemen, a backdrop, an incident I need to deal with. It's public information, nothing secretive. I'm not breaking the code of confidentiality. There was a orientation camp misbehavior among our students at HKU. I'm not able to make any comments. A, is under police investigation, and B, importantly, tomorrow I need to go to Legislative Council to attend the hearing, to be interrogated by the Legislative Council members. But what I want to engage you in this reflection is think about a bunch of over 100 young people in the orientation camp. It requires a lot of courageous leadership. Don't you think so? As the executive committee member, I need the courage to do the orientation camp well. As a group leader, I need to make sure everything goes well. I look after my group members. When things going wrong, sexual harassment, sexual advancement, things like that, do I remain a bystander or has the courage to intervene and also rescue the victim, for example. So that is the backdrop I bring to you. Young people, courage, character, and so forth. I want to carry on this reflection by using 2 C's. As some of the students maybe here, you notice I love to play with letters. The first C I think about our young people is, I think character, building character, or otherwise, it is a choice. It is a choice. It is a choice for our young people. I come to HKU academically, probably doing well, otherwise I won't be here. I have so many goals to achieve. Now I think tonight ACT challenges each one of us, including young people. What am I going to do with my 4 years at HKU, 5 years HKU, or 6 years HKU? I'm going to do academically very well. I'm going to pursue internship, and I'm going to do a master in Oxford. I think the challenge now is, do I take building courage as another choice? No exaggeration. This afternoon, I had a young man walk into my room. I spent 45 minutes with him, and he shared with me the wonderful goals he wants to do. This and that, I encourage, I congratulate him. But anyway, choice for young people. The second C, I'm going to finish, by the way, is connections, conversations. I want to talk to my students. Hey, you don't need to grow, mature, and polish your character alone. You can grow together. You can grow together by having conversations. You can grow together by having connections. So I'm going to finish here. I bring you a dark material. At the same time, I encourage my young students, make a choice. What do you want to pursue? What about growing, maturing, polishing your character as well? That will take you a long, long way. At the same time, don't do it yourself, because being a leader with character is very lonely. As a Dean of Student Affairs, I want to let you know I have fear. I have the pressure to please people. I'm not going to tell you who, okay? And I have worry. And I worry about my quality of decisions. I worry about making tough decisions to make my colleagues' life difficult. I'm very unsure, okay? But I want to let you know I learn to connect. I learn to have conversations, okay? So character as a choice. Do it not alone by yourself, connecting, conversing with people. Hey, thank you so much.
Samson and Ed, why don't we invite you to come on back up, and we're going to have a time here of just kind of having a conversation with the audience here. Great. Thanks, Ed, for getting us all set up and getting there. So, thank you both, both of you, in terms of this idea of really choice, as Samson was saying, and connection, and also this intentionality that we can do it. And it's not only in leadership, but basically in our daily lives we face these things. So now comes your turn, and now we want to hear from you. We want to hear the questions that you have. As Ed was kind of unpacking character and how do we do it, why it's important. Any questions that you have, we want to hear those from you. So what we're going to do here is we've got a couple of people who have some mics, and they're going to be kind of walking around. And at Faith and Global Engagement, what we ask is we have kind of a way of doing our Q&A, and that is the ABCs of our Q&A, right? So if you're going to ask a question, I know we already have a couple up, then we'll ask you to do an ABC in your question. Your A is be articulate, right? So speak right into the mic. We want to hear what you have to say. Second is be brief, because we want to hear from as many people as possible. I think these are the nights where we want to make sure if you have a question, we'd love to hear it. So be brief. And then the third is be centered. Be centered on the topic at hand here. We might have other questions for both of these leaders that could wait for another night, but tonight, what does it mean to have and to be a person of character? Does that sound good? All right, so very simple, ABCs. We have 2 questions. Question over here first, and then we'll go to the front row here. Please. Maybe you can also tell us your name, just your first name.
Sure, Christina.
Christina.
And I'll try to do the ABCs as you just said it.
Thank you, Christina.
So my first question is about nature versus nurture, and I'm wondering whether character is nature or nurture. It seems to be, from the last part of the 7 maybe steps to do it, it can be nurture, but it seems that you have to make a conscious decision to do that. The other part of it is whether character then leads to destiny. And I was reminded by what Margaret Thatcher said. She said, watch your thoughts, for they will become actions. Watch your actions, for they will become habits. Watch your habits, for they will forge your character. Watch your character, for it will make your destiny. And if that's so, and your character is set, is your destiny set as well? Or can you change your character and change your destiny? Thank you.
All right, good. Thank you, Christina. So, is it nature? Is it nurture? Does it lead to your destiny? Ed, you want to take a first go at that?
Yeah, am I still picked up on this mic okay? Yeah. Great. Thank you very much. Great questions, and right to the to the heart of it. So, yes, the argument is that character can be developed, that it's developed certainly at some times in life more than others, certainly developed in the early years in educational settings, but developed right through the life course. This is a philosophical position, but it's also a contemporary and empirical one, and there's good evidence. We've looked at particular work on the development of character during emerging adulthood, the life stage of the 20s. And we did this when we started off our Oxford Character Project because of this very question, and there's good research there saying actually character is also developed, and it's important to develop during the university years, but can be developed at all time. But the point is it needs to be developed intentionally, and so not by, it won't happen positively by accident, unless we're very fortunate to be living in a context which is always helping us in that direction. But I think the encouragement is to take ownership of your character journey. The second part of the question then around character and destiny, yes, absolutely. Well, character, if what we're talking about is the heart of who we are and what drives and directs our life, you need to develop a virtue like justice, and that will then lead your life in a way which pursues more and more causes in the world which seek to bring that virtue to bear. So our character does work out into the different aspects of our lives, our communities, our families, our work, and so on. But of course, character isn't the only thing that's important, and we know this as well. So this is the dimensions of human flourishing that the Harvard program looks at. Our physical health is also important, and we can't necessarily account for that. There are certain steps we can take, but there's an element there of chance and of luck. Some others of our material and physical circumstances are more or perhaps less within our control. So yes, character does direct our steps, but there's also more to human flourishing than character in isolation.
Great, thanks. So it's never too late for any of us then. So there you go, in terms of developing our character. Samson, do you want to?
Yeah, I just love to share an area within my work in working with people affected by major mental health issues. I've been constantly asked by people, etc., about such as individuals with personality difficulty. I think in general, people may call personality disorder, things like that. Lately, the literature will talk about personality adjustment. Do we have any hope? Do we have any future for people in this particular kind of category and pocket? I think the latest kind of development and so forth, we are saying, well, on the one hand, one may say, well, I have such a personality disposition to certain patterns of behavior, most likely dysfunctional coping, etc., etc. But one sort of thinking to penetrate through all these limitations is, hey, I can't change my personality disposition, but one thing I can change though is the behavior, is the coping skills, and also some of the automatic reaction to situations. So those things can be changed. I can't change, again, my personality trait, etc., but I can learn, feel behavioral reactions to cope with the situation better. So I think, again, it suggests the sort of plasticity of coping. It suggests the plasticity of change in this context will be character.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think when we were beginning the character leadership program here at Lead for Life, there's kind of two things. One, it was very encouraging that your character can be formed from the students. But I think also we have the students working with mentors. And the mentors also found that they were on the journey as well, that they were learning from the students different things about their own character development, which something was encouraging on both ways. Yes, right on the front row, one of our students.
Thank you for
Can you tell us your name, please?
Amazing talk that is very instructive and informative and thought-provoking. And it's almost approach to philosophy stuff, and it is quite amazing. My first question is to how to figure out my own characters and to look up I suit which kind of leader, as there are so many industries in the world, maybe technology, business, or social science, or language arts, and I don't know. My character could be what kind of leader, and if I still don't know yet because I'm only age 20. I'm a year 2 computer science.
Congratulations!
Yeah, because I'm only a year 2 computer science undergraduate, yes. But I have a childish dream is to change the world, and just I don't know. Sorry, talk too much about my own stuff.
No, that's good. That's good.
That's cool.
Tell us your name again. Can you tell us your name again?
Chen Kim Richard.
Chen Kim Richard.
Yeah,
Okay,
Richard.
good. So the question is, in terms of how do I know which character I should be developing?
Yeah, but I should articulate all of my question. I have still have some to express.
Keep that brief. Okay, good. Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot. sorry.
Sorry. Go ahead, Richard.
If I found the dream I want to chase, because I thought a huge potential of technology that could change the world, I'm not to judge, but I thought the property, the unicorns of property, they only focus on earning money, but instead of taking it for the betterment of mankind, there's some kind of annoying me. But so I want to maybe operating my own startup, and although I have no, as I'm only age 20 and I'm come from an ordinary family, actually I knew that I have no ability to achieve my dream now. But so I don't know why I keep thoughts about my dream every day, and I plan a 10-year plans and always talk to my professor, to my friends, and I ask opinions about the industry leader which I made them. I don't know why I couldn't meet them, and ask my families. They are all some of them are success in their business. I asked all of my connection, and I asked my friends whether they are willing to follow me. I will keep going, and I will give all my thoughts and all my thoughts and what I done to them, what I done to chase my dream. I will talk to them all. And I hope I really eager to desire their opinions, because
Okay.
I'm only come from a technical background. I really
Good.
need
Richard?
I really need some.
Richard,
I
I'm
really
gonna
need some-
I'm gonna
yeah.
go ahead and kind of wrap
Okay,
that
okay.
up. Okay.
I
So
really need
let-
some. Yeah, I
that's
really
good,
need some
'cause I think-
business,
Yeah.
business technology.
Okay.
Yeah, because there are
No, that's a great.
there are so many people that do much better than me, so I should learn from them.
Right.
And
Okay.
Yeah,
You're only
That's good.
20 years old.
technology, business, and also social science, philosophy, and all the.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's good.
all the
Thank
stuff.
you. Thank you, Richard.
I just want to.
And thank you. Yeah, that's good. It's a great question, and hang on to that dream, because that is the dream of changing the world. And basically, yeah, you have a character. What are you going to choose? And then also the role of technology, because I think it's important to think through what it is, which field, and is there, the technology. You want to take a shot at just?
It's amazing to hear your aspiration, and good on you. Keep your sights high and on using your life to make a difference wherever that's going to be. I think there's a lot that you know at 20, and there's a lot that you don't know, and that's true as you get older as well. But don't lose that aspiration to make a difference wherever you go. And the area you're working in is so important. Of course it is, and the power of technologies, we're just seeing them grow and grow and grow around us all the time. Just this afternoon, I was speaking to some colleagues at Capgemini, which is a business consultancy, talking about AI and character, and how some of this computer science and large language models and using some AI methods can help to support character development in different ways. There are so many things you're going to be able to do with your skills. Keep building up that character so that you can use them for good.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard. Okay, we got maybe a question right here in the middle at the back, and then we'll come over to this side. So, and again, if you could just say your first name, then that helps us. And the other is, the mic's going right down to the middle. That's perfect. Yes, please. No, go ahead. No, the other thing I was going to say is that actually I'm just very encouraged by seeing so many people coming out today. You were talking about this desire for character leadership, and just seeing the people that are here tonight is just encouraging that we all want to learn in this area. But yes, please.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Helen. I think history has shown again and again that a leader with virtue and character leads during a crisis and during peace for the good of humanity. So my question is, what is it going to take for corporates to recognise that and have systems at all stages of the pipeline development of talent to acknowledge and promote and reward that? We see time and time again corporates reward and promote on competence rather than character.
Great, that's an excellent question, Ellen. Samson? Ed?
I'm happy to say it's what we're seeing in the UK. Thanks, Helen. It's a really important question. But I think I put up the Financial Times article, which was there this week. What we're seeing is the failure here for individuals actually becoming business risk. And when that happens, there's then wider pressure on organisations to implement initiatives which are around character and culture. And I think that's a hope in the UK, at least, is that as this increasingly comes to the fore, that there's a possibility to start to move the dial and to introduce character back into a conversation that it was once part of, but perhaps has been lost from. So I think this is where we've thought about regulation, we've thought about culture, but we've forgotten the most important or the central personal piece. We've forgotten this idea of character somewhat. Can we bring this back in? And that's an aspiration there. But I think you've identified the dynamics that are often at play, and it's a task that is ahead, I think, to be done.
Yeah, excellent. Samson, any comments on that?
Don't do it alone. Just like what you say, the system often does not recognize and celebrates the hard work. So I would say individuals who are doing that, don't do it alone, and have someone giving you advice, mentor, things like that. I think very helpful.
There's a book actually on moral courage, and one of the things they talk about is that different corporations, it's easier to be courageous in some than in others. But in ones where it's not easy to be, like in very, very high-performing organizations, sometimes they encourage you to form courage coalitions. So you get these coalitions together, and in that area you begin to make those influence. And I found that encouraging in itself. So thank you for that. Question here, front row? Yes, or second row?
Hello, I'm Mandy from Education.
Nice to meet you.
And I want to have a question that I learned about that characters can be built from the cognitive to the decision and the behavior, right? So in the 7th step, that it's easy to do when the people have an intention to change, especially it's the growth mindset, right? So very simple. If the people is a fixed mindset and he has a many blind spots, and he never believed that he has a blind spot. Okay, so we didn't want to say just like St. Paul confession in that stage, but in a normal person or ordinary person, how can we do and how to alert a people character just like that? And is there any research on this? Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. I think we're all laughing because we probably all know a few. And so there you go. Thank you. Ed, research in that area?
Research on growth mindset as applied to character development particularly. I can't think of anything, but I think there's the wider research on Dweck's construct on growth mindset is obviously highly applicable to growth in character, intentional growth here as well. So I think you identify it exactly rightly. How do you help someone who's got a fixed mindset to develop a growth mindset in any domain? I think the answer probably transfers across to the character domain. Maybe with Samson's point and the friendship point kind of key, that this isn't something which is done individually and it's communally and collectively. So how can we develop pairings, partnerships, communities where character development is normal and valued and celebrated, and I think that perhaps could help us.
Yeah, that's good. Samson? No? Actually, I think the story you were telling also about Clementine and Churchill,
Yeah.
you know, that really speaks to that, because she had obviously earned the right to speak, and he would listen to her, where he may not listen to others around him who were probably trying to say the same thing. But she was able to, throughout that position of love and earning that. And I think that's important. Sometimes before we speak into people, that if we earn the right to speak, that they will listen. So.
And also, I think the last part of the story, the woman wrote to Winston, not only in words, but also the drawing at the end.
Right.
Yeah,
It's the cat. That's
that
what it
reminds me, not only using words, sometimes a gesture, a drawing, or even being there, the presence and the silence may break through some of the fixed mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, the symbols, stories sometimes are helpful.
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
engage in a story sometimes easier than you can in a
Story is
directive
very powerful.
or whatever. Good. Right here in the blue, I think you've had your hand up for a little bit, sorry, and then we'll go to the other side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for
No,
your
listen.
amazing lecture. And I'm Kathy. I'm a year 1 student from the Faculty of Social Sciences. And when I was browsing the Lead for Life website, I noticed a sentence. It said, whether you're extroverted or introverted, you may have leadership qualities. But my problem is that in today's society, people who seem to have extroverted qualities being more competitive in leadership positions. I wonder how introverts deal with this. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So the qualities, because sometimes it just seems like the extroverts are the leaders, but we know actually, I think from research, that some of the best leaders are quiet. But comments on that?
I'll give it a go, and I'm sure, Alex, you can add to that too. I would say exactly lecture and seminar and workshop, and also a little promotion about the Lead for Life program. I think exactly that is the kind of myth we want to deconstruct, meaning leaders have different shapes and size. Yeah. Seriously, I mean, people don't believe I am I wouldn't say I'm a complete introvert, but I'm introvert. I regain my energy by being alone.
Yeah.
Other people regain energy by having party, drinking, and da-da-da. No, I regain my energy by being alone. Colleagues telling me, you're an introvert. So number one, I would say, I think the modern literature, modern teaching, if you like, we are talking about different shape and size, etc. And also leadership is important in a sense that we do need people with different qualities, personality to lead as well. And I love, Ed, your presentation. You talk about the middle column being the quality, but anything too excess and too deficit will become problematic. And I think it's the same. If you are extrovert all the time, excessive, can be very problematic. So I think that's one reminder. The second thing to finish I want to say is, hey, my leadership journey tells me, looking back, is that you and I'm sure you are even younger than 20 years old. You have plenty of time to grow your own style of leadership.
Yeah.
That fits your upbringing, fits your personality, and fits your vision as well. You and we don't have to mimic what the other people look like. You need to have your own style of leadership. You need to grow your own language. You need to grow your own manner as well. It belongs to you.
Yeah. No,
Does that make sense, Ed?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're in an amazing position at the beginning of your journey here at HKU to start to explore. The thing I'll say in relation as well, so is what we're talking about character leadership, or the importance of character for leadership. It's not one style or one theory. It animates all the kinds of styles of leadership, and every human being who's a leader. It's about those human qualities that then work out in leadership across different aspects of life in different parts of the world and sectors of society. So, yeah, I guess you have an opportunity here to take an adventure. What will it mean for you to be a leader and to grow in that way yourself?
You look like only 18 years old.
And you're already exhibiting great courage by asking the question. So well done. That's good. So we have over here, yes, and raising your hand in the black suit. And then we'll come down here.
Thank you.
And we have one back.
Hello, I'm Marie. Thank you for tonight. I have a question regarding the good leaders that become bad leaders. Have you identified patterns to tell us like what we shouldn't do, or are there buffers that we can implement so we don't actually drift?
That's a good question. So you may start out as a good leader, but somehow you drift. And
and are there patterns that force them into something, into bad behavior?
Right. Yeah, okay. And what checks?
Great. Yeah, not something I've looked at, but super interesting, and how character is compromised in different ways, and those stories. And there is some work here on bad leadership. It's not something I've explored, but highly relevant, very important, very interesting.
Actually, Susanna Kemp was here yesterday with the Laidlaw Scholarship Program, and she talked a little bit on that in terms of, she was talking about maybe all those names that you just saw in the Financial Times and all of that. None of them started out to say, this is what I want to do. No one starts out and graduates from college saying, I want to steal at some point. I want to defraud people, but somehow that happened. And I think it's be good to look at that, and also, again, as you say, what checks and balances can we put in way? And I think some of the friendships and the connections that we talked, we need people that will speak into us and say, you're not who you are, just in the same way that Clementine did. So it's good. Good question. Yes, right here in front. You've been very patient. So.
Hi, I'm Anthony. Thank you, Dr. Brooks, for your fantastic lecture. As you mentioned, culture eats character for breakfast. So I would like to know, do you have any advice for younger generation on how to overcome the limit of the culture environment that we grow up? Thank you.
That's a great question.
So the quote actually comes from Peter Drucker, who said culture eats strategy for breakfast, but we changed it slightly with the watermelon to think about culture. And I think there is this dynamic, particularly when you're young. You enter into an organisation which is very powerful, which is set in its ways, which has patterns and practices, and here you are, what influence do you have? But I think there are ways in which you can own influence even when you are at the entry level in an organisation and new in a context, which can really help you. One is, so two ways. One is to work with people who are around you, so your peers, your collective. So don't go it alone, but develop support networks. Two, ask questions. You can do that when you're new somewhere. Why does this work like that? You can't ask that question always as you go along, because it seems impertinent if you're in an organisation for a long time. But you do have that possibility, and that's that another way is certain kind of powers and opportunities when you're new and younger, that you can push the system in different directions. So I think there are some possibilities. It's not easy. The final thing I might say is think carefully about the organisations that you want to be part of. So as you make a decision to work in a certain place, that decision is part of the decision of the kind of person that you're going to be, because organisations do have a shaping effect on us. And so I think just taking that in a clear-eyed way, okay, I'm going to go and work in I want to go and work in a bank. There are these 3 banks to work from. I think one of the aspects of that decision is the culture of the bank and the alignment of the culture with your own values, how you'll navigate there and live and work there really well. So I think take that aspect seriously perhaps as well.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I had a question at the very back in the kind of the rust-colored shirt there. We'll be kind of wrapping up here in a little bit. Yes, your name, and is the mic working?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Valent. I'm final year student in HQ. Came across this lecture in the email, and happy to be here. My question is, you touched upon the notion of nice guys finish last, and happy to hear your thoughts on what qualities does it take to transform this notion to benefit guys with character or are nice?
I think adjusting the time horizon is really important here, and just thinking it clearly about what it means to win. What's the success that we're going after? Because on a certain paradigm of winning, there maybe isn't as much space for some of the character qualities we've been talking about than others. So I think we've got to be thinking in a really clear-eyed way about, well, actually, look, what does it really mean to win? And that's a question which is personal, but it's also societal, and we need to be talking about that. You know, how are we understanding success? What are we going after? And the kinds of people then that we will want to lead us will relate to the kind of society that we want to be, I think.
Yeah, that's good. Samson? No? Okay. There, yeah, one, sorry. No, yes.
Hi, my name is Peter. I was just wondering, a lot of the studies on character have always been studied from the Western culture. We haven't had too much study on the Eastern culture effect of culture because, Eastern culture of character. Character was molded and grounded from the family all the way up until you hit adulthood, and then another aspect comes in to mold the character. So I was wondering, with all this information from the West, how can we take, like Hong Kong, for example, and deal with the kids here in a very Eastern culture, growing up with the Eastern thinking?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Peter, for that. So maybe just as you're thinking about that answer, that's one of the things we're trying to do. One of the things we're trying to do tonight as well is to have it, and also the Lead for Life Character Leadership Program really looks at how do we develop character, and here at HKU and in the businesses of community, and also trying in the business of Hong Kong, and trying to add to the global context, because we think there's a lot that could be added to. One of the things in Lead for Life is that everything is built around community because of that value on communal living is a very important part. But that's exactly where we need to do a lot of learning, and we need to be part of that global conversation, I think. So, Ed, Samson, do you maybe?
I resonate with you very strongly when you talk about family. I think it's a very important backdrop and also cornerstone to grow and also mature character. Then immediately I think about when we refer to the Asian Oriental culture and so forth, I immediately think about a lot of legends, metaphors, songs and images and stories passing through generations and generations. I think those are the rich resources we should examine as well. So I just respond to that. Yeah, great question. Thank you. Yeah.
Great question and a great need, I think, as we develop that. So we're going to bring this question time to a close here. Sorry, every time I was thinking I'll have one more, then I see about 20 hands. I'm not sure which one I would choose of those 20. So that's great, and that's part of why we're here, and that's part of why, like Peter, we want to have this conversation, is because we think we need to have this conversation and continue to have and learn from each other. So in a minute here, I'm just going to ask you guys if there's one thought you would like to leave with the group tonight. But just maybe before I do that, or before you guys finish up with that, Hualun, do we have the slide on faith and global engagement? Because we basically, part of what we're trying to do is to get these conversations going. And there's a number of things that, there's 4 different lectures coming up, 2 next month in November. And then so you can see here, basically November 3 and November 8th, really looking at this idea of the Christianity in modern China and also the Chinese way. What does that look like? And trying to, again, keep this conversation going. In January, we're going to have Michael Lindsay basically talking about leadership and what does it mean to have leadership. He's a president of a university. And then Flourishing and Mathematics by Francis Su. When I first saw that title, I thought it must be a wrong title. We must have a typo or something there. But Flourishing in Mathematics. Some of you mathematical minds would say, yes, exactly, that's what life is about. For others, it might be a little more challenging for us. So we'll come in February and learn how to flourish through mathematics. But in closing this night, Samson, Ed.
I want to come back in February for Francis Su and hear about. Thank you so much for having me. I think the thing I might say to finish is that we've been talking about character and leadership, but really this is about walking the talk, and we have responsibilities in different parts of life and aspects of life. These are more and less formal opportunities to exercise leadership. How are we doing that? And if we think character is important, and I hold it dear, it's not something that we should just talk about. We actually should get on and put these things into practice.
Yeah, and do it. Yeah, it's good work. Good work. Samson?
I'm just thinking about the earlier question in terms of how I can grow my character among my young people peers. And I would say my reflection is perhaps to learn to say no from young age may be a good idea as well, because so much pressure, so much expectation, so much pleasing demand on our young people, given the social media and all those things. Sometimes we just have to say no, set the boundary. This idea comes to my mind.
Yeah, no, that's good work. So choice means yes and no. You're not only choosing both ways. Good. Let's give a warm appreciation for both of these leaders. And thank you both. Now there were a lot of hands that were still up. We'll linger around here for a bit if you want to come down and maybe ask that question that you've been dying to ask, and also have some conversations. And let's keep the conversation going. On here, if you want to put the QRC code, then you'll get you can go on our mailing list, and we'll send you out information of that. Also, feel free to take one of those cards. But on behalf of Faith and Global Engagement and Cedars and Lead for Life, thank you for coming tonight. So.